7 o'clock. Call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Artis?
Here.
Mrs. Boone? Here. Mrs. Halsall? Here. Mr. Hose? Mr. Kunkel?
Here.
Mr. McGinnis? Mr. Redmond?
Okay, we need to approve the agenda.
I would make a motion to approve the agenda with the exception of committee reports.
I'll second.
Thank you. We need a roll call vote on that?
Mr. Artis?
Yes?
Mrs. Boone? Yes. Mrs. Halsall?
Yes.
Mr. Kunkel?
Yes. Okay. Consent agenda, we need to approve minutes of regular meeting August 12th, 2020. Communications, activity report, approval of bills paid to the general fund, food service, 2016 debt service fund, 2016 construction project fund, sinking fund, and student activities fund with a total of $761,123.82. On the motion?
Four.
Roll call?
Mr. Artis?
Yes?
Mrs. Boone? Yes. Mrs. Halsall? Yes. Mr. Kunkel?
Yes. Any comments from the public at this time?
I'd like to be recognized, Mr. Chair.
Okay, you're what recognized. So whatever you have to say.
Okay, thank you. I would like to make the board aware of a millage proposal that you'll see November 3rd on the ballot. It's for the Missaukee County EMS department. I have a flyer that we posted on the county's website, www.missaukee.org, for additional information. But in a nutshell, we're asking for an increase in our millage. It's presently at 1/2 mil. It will expire the end of 2021, and we're asking at that time to go to 1 mil. Currently, the budget for the department is just a little over $1 million. The millage generates $306,700 presently at 1/2 mil. So at 1 mil, it would double to $712,000. The revenue that we generate from ambulance runs is not sufficient to fill the gap between the millage and our budget at present, which is why we're asking for an increase. Last year, we collected approximately $542,000 in run revenue. This year, we're currently at $457,000 with just under a month left in the fiscal year. With the increase in the millage, we'll be able to maintain the level of service that we're providing, which has greatly expanded since we first established the millage in 1993. So at that time, our department started as just strictly on call, running basic life support. Today, we are staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have 17 regular and regular and part-time employees, paramedics and EMTs, and we provide service at the advanced life support level. We staff 2 trucks pretty much all of the time, 2 ambulances. And we provide service throughout the county and also transfer services when required between, for example, Cadillac Hospital, Traverse City Munson, and other locations as patient needs dictate. So you can see more detail about the department and our needs, and especially our capital needs, if you go to the county's website. Again, that's www.missaukee.org. And I also would encourage you all to look for additional information later this month, where we will be hosting an open house at the department. I believe the date is September 26th. It's a Saturday. So come on out. We'll show you the equipment that we operate and really some of the advanced life-saving techniques that we employ. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you. For those of you that know, this is Preacher Garland, Administrator. We appreciate your presentation. Having been a recipient of all that good service, I have to give you my mind. Any other public comment? Thank you, Trent. We'll move on to administrative reports, please. Elementary school, Mr. Hamilton's not here. Middle school and high school, Dr. Hanel, please.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I combined the board reports. I usually give you 3 separate ones, but we're living in crazy times, so I kind of combined them. I think that the pieces of note, we've talked through a lot of things leading up to this school year. It's interesting, we currently have district-wide, I think, 399 virtual students, so just almost 400. I included grades 6 through 8. We currently have 272, which is about normal, 173 in person, and 99 virtual. Grades 9, 12, we're up to 400, which is good. You know, we're usually about 30 or 40 shy of that. 269 in person with 131 virtual. I'd like to share that our virtual program currently is doing a pretty incredible job in terms of getting kids equipment, getting them into classes, and then the communication needs that we have just for student learning, in addition to our pupil accounting piece. We proactively invited Barbette Lane, our ISD pupil accounting auditor, to come in today. She met with us, and that was very beneficial. Our goal is to ensure that we dot every I and cross every T, but that we build systems that are here to stay for quite some time. Michael and Tammy Thome are doing an amazing job with that, with their detailed eye and their just the attention that they're putting into that along with the time. So things are going really well with that, and I know that you know more about really the elementary programs and what they've been doing, but their programming has been excellent as well. So that's a good thing. I just wanted to share that we've talked about a lot of different models. You know, having a threshold for this building where the balance is this: we are maxed out and we are having classes in facility areas that I don't have any more, honestly. This would be another place to hold a class if we needed. We haven't separated the gyms or the cafeteria yet, but those realistically would be next. We're at that point where we're determining, it would be hard right now to tell half of our kids that show up every day that they can only come 2 days a week, so we're not going to. We're going to keep rolling as we are. With that, it sure is taxing our staff, right? I mean, everyone is kind of in a moderate stress anxiety situation anyway, and it's really hard, but so just continue to encourage them as you do, like you guys do when you see our staff, but continue to do that. A lot of them are just consistently operating in a moderate stress anxiety, just walking around their normal day with everything going on. So I'll continue to keep you posted with that. In terms of athletics, how fortunate are we during a pandemic year to be able to offer anything that's extra, right? Especially extracurricular. These are interesting times, and I share that because even as I was sitting here, the governor's office has sent out clarification for the mask rule, right? So Executive Order 180 just came out moments ago, but it's not the clarification that people will want, and I'll just share that. The clarification is that if you're unable to be 6 feet apart, during an athletic competition or practice, then you must wear a mask, right? So that's the clarification that we've been waiting for this week, which to me, as an athletic director, as an administrator, as a father, right, as someone who is watching our athletes practice. And yesterday they ran by, the cross-country team ran by Kim's office. We're going to reach a level where safety really becomes a concern, and then we will just have to make good calls for our kids. And that I've talked to all the coaches that if we get to a point, even tomorrow's volleyball match, is there any peripheral vision that is compromised? I mean, they obviously have concern, but for our kids to have a chance to compete, we have to follow the executive orders, and we can't compromise on those. So I'm not okay running an event or a contest and compromising on those orders. I would rather just say that we're not doing a specific thing, right? What happened this week, just to keep you updated, is some of the events were pushed until the end of the week or next week, hoping that there would be some clarity and that kids would be able to not have to wear these during those pieces. But again, I'm just interpreting that right now and trying to process it myself. So along with that, right, with football being reinstated at the end of last week, and we are planning to move ahead with middle school football as of now. Every other school in the Highland Conference is planning on doing the same thing. So we're making arrangements for that. I know that many of you have probably received calls regarding access for Pop Warner and our other younger football players and what they are able to do or not, right? We have talked to local schools to see what their intention is there. Cheerleaders and band, right? And the interesting thing is that the state is coming up saying this, and then MHSAA will say something kind of similar, but oftentimes different. So currently, bands are not allowed for Friday nights, but cheerleaders are. Okay, what we're going to do actually is count the band and our 500 participants for pregame. They will play the national anthem at football contests. Then they will leave after the pregame, right? So then they won't count into our 500 at that time. So we're still trying to give kids opportunities in the midst of and around the guidelines that we have in place. But I share kind of the black and white and the grayness of that with you, because if you have questions as things come up every single day, which they do, and need clarification, it very well may be different than what was in place yesterday. And feel free to continue the conversations we're already having, because we're doing our best to communicate things outside of here. One of the pieces you might hear of that I talked to athletes about today is that MHSAA guidelines, especially with the new executive order that I referenced just moments ago, is spectators need to abide by the same thing. And we don't have clarification if medical releases matter. So as of right now, our understanding is that athletes, even with a medical condition, they have to have a mask on. If you're playing, you need a mask. If you're spectating, you need a mask. And if you are unable to, then you're not able to come into our facilities, right? We're checking the legality of that in terms of discrimination and so on, because we want to make sure we're meeting our pieces there. But that's a tough one for some of our kids and some of our parents who legitimately can't wear one, right? People will be making some challenging decisions for them and their families that we will be a part of as well. And I just want to try to keep you informed as best we can there. I listed here the spectator expectations for the Highland Conference. Face coverings are required at all times, indoor and outdoor. That is pursuant to the executive order. Distancing is required, except for immediate family. And then, again, the doctor excuse documentation does not nullify the mask requirement for the safety of others. So the interesting dynamic when you arrive at an event is that MHSAA officials are not being asked to enforce these guidelines, but we are, the gaming officials, right? So we, as the game organizers, ADs, and any game managers that are in there, we are the ones. So you will see play stopped by MHSAA official saying, Tim, go take care of the people in the stands, and I'll go do that, and then we'll resume play, and then they'll stop the game again. And that'll just be an interesting thing. If I ever look like I'm struggling when I'm doing that, I'll try not to. I want to make sure I represent us well, but feel free to, cheer me on or something. Anyway, a lot of gray area, right? But we expect this. We've talked about how there's no real clean way to come out of a pandemic. And we just, we hope for further clarification, and we'll continue to do what we think is best for kids. So thanks for listening to all that. Would you like me to do the learning plan, just the highlights right now? Or?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that,
awesome.
Tim?
So one of the pieces, you guys passed or adopted rather preparedness plan. I believe it was in our July meeting that we had, or August meeting. That was something we needed to submit to the state of Michigan as to how we intend to meet the needs of all of our learners, whether we're in person or not, with regard to technology and every other aspect of learning. This extended learning plan is the piece, it really is the accountability piece that we appreciate. Okay, these are the details that we need to keep up on monthly, things that we need to report monthly, right, and share with you so that you know, as a Board of Education, we're meeting the needs of all of our kids, regardless of 300 or 99 or choosing to not be in person or not. How are we doing that? So that's what this document really is. The assurances on page 3, as we walk through those honestly are pretty, these assurances are the measures and the specific pieces that we need to address in this document. So benchmark assessments, we needed to choose one. Luckily, we do NWEA as a benchmark assessment. We have for the last 8 years, so we're ahead of the game there. Talks about pupil instruction virtually and what we do there. It talks about our plan to coordinate with the local health department and what we do in those situations. And then it also talks about the environments that we are providing education, how we plan to meet the needs of students who need special services, and then what two-way communication looks like to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our kids, and so that pupil accounting-wise, our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. I won't read this really to you. I know that you will do that. This really is a summary of the preparedness plan that you've already adopted. So on page 5 in the opening statement, we simply say that as we return this fall, our priority is to ensure the well-being of all members of our school community. It talks about the in-person and virtual learning options that we offer. And then from there, we set educational goals, moving on to page 6. Evidence-based assessment practices. It's nice that we haven't really needed to implement anything new in doing this for best practices because we are already doing them. It was just identifying. So our educational goals on page 7 are that all students will improve performance in reading and ELA from now until spring, right, as measured by NWEA's normative scale. And that's for goal 1 and 2. So those are the goals we're setting for math and reading and other English language arts components, which again, that's the benchmark that the state supports, and we're in good shape there. On page 8, we simply needed to note what our mode of instruction is for the year. Again, we have face-to-face and virtual instruction at this time. Academic standards are mentioned and just discussed on page 9 for curriculum and instruction. Again, our staff members are working hard to ensure that kids are not just learning pieces, right, with packets and so on, but really digging into necessary content to push them further and prepare them for the next years ahead in terms of learning. 10, we needed to talk about assessment and grading, and we do that. We have not needed to change our assessment and grading the way that we do that, right? Power Schools, our student information system still works, whether kids are in person or not. So that's a nice piece that our parents are familiar with, and we'll continue to elaborate the tools that are on there. In terms of technology on page 11, again, we have distributed, I think, close to 300 of our hotspots. We have Verizon, AT&T. We actually have a couple of situations where neither of those might work for families. So Josh Fairbrother is actually talking with those parents. He sent both types of hotspots out. He's keeping in daily communication. We've talked to Kim if we need to do something with satellite service where that's needed to meet the needs of our kids, we'll do that. So really we are going to any lengths to ensure education for our kids. That's a pretty special thing right now. It's a real point of pride for us. So again, we laid out in our preparedness and response plan what that looks like in terms of continuity. As I turn to page 12, students with special needs, all IEPs, 504 plans, and anything else in terms of special services really is being done with the level of excellence that we would want if they were our own kids, because they are, right? Like, we've identified Selena Hamilton as our high school special services teacher. Kylie Baldwin is our middle school special services teacher. They both have about 20 kids on their caseload that are at home. So we're doing virtual IEPs, right? We're holding those meetings in the same way that we would if parents were here. We're visiting homes if that makes sense to do, right? If the family hasn't chosen to be at home for specific reasons, and then we are able to still do that. So we're going to whatever lengths we need to ensure that not just the IEPs and 504s are followed, but that kids still feel attached and connected as Lake City Trojans, even if they're not in here every day. And then page 13, right? This is just our assurance that our plan does address ways that all learners are supported. And it just talks about how people want to read our preparedness plan, and they can access that on our website. So what this document will continue to evolve into throughout the course of the year is we will update, like I will give you reports on our testing and how we're doing mid-year. We are going to, in terms of two-way communication, we will provide that at the next staff or at the next board meeting. Just in terms of, are we meeting the 75% for accountability? And are we meeting the two-way communication benchmarks for pupil accounting? Because those are kind of separate. But you will have those. I know that we will make room and time for public to have questions about any of those aspects as well as we need. And then we'll have them available on our website as kind of as a dashboard of sorts. So that's what the extended learning plan is, almost a progress report, just to make sure that we're following through and that the preparedness document is a living document, not just something that we did to check a box. So any questions about any elements of this?
Tim, I don't have any real questions, but I do have a couple of comments. Can I make them?
Yeah, please.
I've been trying to do a little research on how other schools have opened up school. And I can name two of them in particular that my grandkids go to. One is Byron Center down in the Grand Rapids area. The other one is Traverse City Public Schools. And I have a son-in-law who's a teacher up there. So those are two major ones that I've tried to benchmark against. And from what I see, what our teachers have done and what our leadership includes you and Kim and Tyler, I'm amazed at how well we've done this. We've pulled this off. Traverse City did not start school in class. They have like a couple days, but then they have to go online. And the reason they didn't is because they work, and they don't want this out, but they weren't prepared with their virtual school. They bought some package and it wasn't ready, it didn't get ready, and so that threw them right off. That's a major school district in my opinion. Byron Center, they have been a little bit better than Traverse City from what I can tell, but they too have kids come in a couple days, and then the other days is virtual. You know, and I think if that works for their needs, I think that's positive. I don't think it's the best way to do it, in my opinion. Now, that's just anecdotal. I don't have any research to back that up. But kids need to be in school. And so what I'm saying is, I'm really impressed with what you and Kim and the teachers have done. And I can imagine the stress that you're all under. Think next year, if we don't have the pandemic, how easy it will be to start school, right?
Yes,
Huh?
yeah, for sure.
So I just want
Yeah, we
you guys,
appreciate that.
I want you guys to know that, and I can't speak for the other board members, but that's how I feel, what I've seen from you guys. And I know there's probably hiccups and there's probably not making everything perfect, but it sure looks good to me from what I've done with comparing to other districts. So thank you very much.
We appreciate that.
Yes.
Pass-
Very much, thank you, we'll pass that on.
If you can pass that on to
Yes.
teachers, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything? Kim, before you start, can I
Yes.
go back to Tyler? Did you want to say anything about the elementary school?
Yes,
I'm
I
sorry.
have a report here for Tyler, and I'm just gonna highlight just a couple things here. He has a staff highlight here. Zach Jones is our 5th grade teacher. He was 2nd grade last year in science and social studies. And Zach is in his 2nd year at Lake City Elementary. And he has made the decision to go up to the 5th grade, and he's teaching both social studies and science. And Zach also helps us he is also like our ESL lead teacher. He actually speaks 7 languages. So we're very fortunate in the skill set that Zach brings to our district. And so he's been a great asset. I will again highlight our virtual program. We are very pleased with what our elementary team is doing at the elementary, because they are actually trying to make that a very seamless experience. So we have 2 students right now that have to be at home, and so they started in school and then they had to go home, and that can be seamless for those kids now, and so they're able to not miss a beat by doing that, and so we're really pleased with that. So overall, we feel it's really been a great start to the year. Even with transportation, we went from 11 runs to 18 by doubling with elementary and then middle and high school. But I will tell you, I'm out there with the buses, and I really think it's going very well, very smooth for our students. And we've got through a few hiccups that first week, but that's to be expected. But it is going very well, even with parent drop off and pick up at the elementary. That's always a big thing, and that's going well also. So very good news there at elementary. So I'm going to go ahead and go right on, Mr. Artis, and I just want to talk a little bit about the community center. As you know, we've been working on waiting to see when we can open this up, and then the governor came out with an executive order, and so I have put together, this is just a draft, this is not a final copy, but just some guidelines that we are looking at putting in place. We're trying to open up at least a walking track inside for 2 days a week right now for approximately an hour and a half. We do have to get volunteers to help supervise that due to budget cuts and the things that we're trying to manage within the district with cuts. But just some of the highlights of this, of using indoor, we are really following the executive orders with masks and everything we have to do with this. So this has to go right by the book because we are a school district as well. And so I've highlighted this. This will be available for our participants that come in and want to walk. We are going to limit to 25. Everybody's going to have to wear a mask now inside. At first, we didn't think they were going to have to, but they will when they're walking. So they will have to wear a mask. They will have to sign in, temperature check, the whole thing, because if anybody becomes ill, the health department's going to ask for contact tracing. So we're going to have to follow that route. Sanitizing, and all of these guidelines are based on MHSAA, executive orders, Michigan Health Department, and CDC guidelines. So I'm trying to get this open at least a couple days a week for our people. So we're going to start slow because we have to be able to manage the number of cleaning pieces that have to go with this. Any questions on the community center? Okay. So we can go ahead and start with the title.
Well, is that the rest of your superintendent
Yes,
report?
yes it is.
Okay, sorry. Policy recommendations. Superintendent, please.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about our Title IX sexual harassment policy. This is a new policy that has been distributed throughout the state. I have undergone a pretty lengthy training in this, so I just want to highlight a few things with this. The biggest piece with this is that all district employees are now mandated reporters, just like with child abuse being a mandated reporter. Now with sexual harassment, we are mandated reporters. And in addition to this policy, instead of just having a Title IX coordinator, which in the past has been myself, there is now a number of roles that we now have to fill. So there's Title IX coordinator, there's an investigator, decision maker, and appeals officer. So for our coordinators, we have 2 counselors, which will be our coordinators. Deputy Eric Grace will be our investigator. The decision maker will be Dr. Hano, and then in his absence would be Tyler Hamilton. So we have a couple people that will be able to do that, and I will be the appeals officer. So there are a number of documents that have to be filed. We have to keep these documents for 7 years, and so there's a number of pieces that we will have to go through with this. As you can tell with this policy, it defines sexual harassment. There are a number of definitions there, talking about sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, stalking, and a number of those pieces there with definitions. It also gives the definitions of what and the role of what the appeals officer does, what a formal complaint is, what is the decision maker. So a number of those pieces are explained in this board policy. So in addition, it also goes through the actual what has to happen as far as documentation, record keeping, supportive measures that have to be followed. And it really is the district, school districts now, there is a liability here, so it's very important. We have a 10-day rule that if there is a complaint, it must be investigated. And it can either be staff to staff, it can be student to staff, or it can be student to student. Any of those can be considered sexual harassment. So if you hear something, you have to say something. So we have a 30-minute video. This is in addition to the other training that we've already had that the entire district will have to watch, and we will get that out to everybody. It goes through a grievance process. It just explains.
Is that for students too, or
just for staff? Just for staff, that is correct. And then this policy will be posted. If you are, let's say there might be 2 students involved in a sexual harassment complaint, they would get a copy of policy. We have form letters that are already done. We have actually purchased this policy through our attorneys. And then this we put in our other policy book. So it's a very thorough policy requiring training, record keeping, and follow through. Is there any questions on the new Title IX sexual harassment policy?
So if they're in the band room having sex, is it covered under here if they're both agreeing to doing it?
So if somebody makes a complaint,
So it has to be a complaint.
it's a complaint, or there's because something like that would fall under just disciplinary measures.
Okay.
The other thing that's important to know is that if you have let's say you have an assistant coach who had just graduated from high school and is now dating a senior, and they are, whether they're consenting adults or not, because that coach is actually not in school and, a person of authority, they're a staff member with a student, because there is no sexual relations between staff and student, none whatsoever. So they've really extended this policy to really go after that.
Even if it's consensual.
Even if it's consensual, that is correct. It's against the law.
Okay. The Title IX sexual harassment policy, no other questions. This recommendation was submitted as a final reading,
First reading.
or first reading, with the second reading scheduled for tonight, which is what we just did, right?
Well,
Okay.
we'll talk about it again, just to make sure there's no questions.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then we'll move on to action items. Action items, bond fund project pay applications.
The board has received applications for payment from the bond fund. The recommended action is that the board approve the following payments from the bond fund for the high school from Hallmark Construction, Bell Construction, Balma, and Otwell Mobby.
So moved.
Support. Sorry.
Okay, we need a roll call.
Mr. Artist,
Yes?
Mrs. Boone,
Yes.
Mrs. Halsall,
Yes.
Mr. Kunkel.
Yes.
Okay, passes. Number 2, sinking fund project pay applications.
The board has received applications for payment from the sinking fund. In the high school, we have Cornerstone Architects, Michigan Mechanical North, Zylstra, National Coatings, the Bauma Corporation, Hallmark Construction, Block Electric, Val, and American Waste. The recommended action is that the board approve the following payments from the sinking fund.
Need a motion?
So
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Artist,
Yes?
Mrs. Boone,
Yes.
Mrs. Halsall,
yes.
and Mr. Kunkel.
Yes.
Number 3, approve preschool and latchkey handouts for the 2021 school year.
The board has received copies of the preschool and latchkey handbooks for the 2021 school year. The recommended action is that the board approve the preschool and latchkey handbooks as presented.
Motion? Second, Craig Artist. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Artist,
Yes?
Mrs. Boone,
Yes.
Mrs. Halsall,
Yes.
Mr. Kunkel.
Yes.
Number 4, continuity of learning plan.
The board has received copies of the continuity of learning plan for the 2021 school year. The recommended action is that the board approve the continuity of learning plan for the 2021 school year.
Motion?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Artist,
Yes?
Mrs. Boone,
Yes.
Mrs. Halsall,
Yes.
Mr. Kunkel.
Yes.
Number 5, approve virtual school job descriptions.
The board has received copies of the virtual school job descriptions for the elementary, middle, and high school. The recommended action is that the board approve the virtual school job descriptions as presented.
Motion?
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Artist,
Yes?
Mrs. Boone,
Yes.
Mrs. Halsall,
Yes.
Mr. Kunkel.
Yes.
Okay, policy recommendation.
Superintendent Blazek has presented the board with the following policy recommendation, the Title IX harassment policy. This recommendation was submitted as the second reading with adoption scheduled for tonight's board meeting. Copies are available for review at central office. Are there any other questions or any other details that you would like me to explain about the Title IX sexual harassment policy?
All right. Okay, action items, policy recommendations.
The board has had both first and second readings of the recommended board policy. The recommended action is that the board approve the following policy as presented. Title IX sexual harassment policy.
Motion?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Artist,
Yes?
Mrs. Boone,
Yes.
Mrs. Halsall,
Yes.
Mr. Kunkel.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to other items. Board committee meetings, Wednesday, October 7th, 6:30 PM. Artist, Booms, and Kunkel. Thursday, October 8th, 6:30 AM. Elso, Hose, and Redden. McGinnis is off. Next regular board meeting, Wednesday, October 14th at 7 PM at the elementary cafeteria. Any additional comments from the public? to adjourn the meeting at 7:40 PM. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Craig. You did a great job.